Everyone, and welcome back to CappingTV and our coverage of the Australian Overwatch Open Division playoffs. We are into round 3 here, and I am Jill Phoenix. With me is Cyber and Cyber. We have an incredibly exciting match coming up for us.
Oh man, it is very much exciting. We're still in the upper bracket, but we do have two very heavy hitters on standby. We have X69 Gaming, who is the number 1 seed, and we have Jim's Esports, who is in the number 4 seed. And well, Jim's having a larger empire compared to what does he have? Jim's mowing, Jim's cleaning, and then Jim's Esports.
He's going into every kind of avenue that they have in the book, but yeah, it's very interesting. Both X69 coming in as the first seed, Jim's as the 4th, but looking at the results coming through this bracket so far, Jim's hasn't lost a map yet, whereas X69 had a bit of a struggle in the previous round against Pulse. They ended up winning it 3-2, but they've had to really work for it a little bit more.
They have had to work a lot more for it. Just in the previous round, X69 had to basically scratch and claw a 3-2 victory over Pulse, who has now dropped into the lower bracket. And maybe that fight will keep going into this next map. And we have a choice to start off with between Busan and I'm just blanking on what the other map is. It's been a long day. It's Busan
And Nepal.
And Nepal. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a bit of a toss-up which one we're going to go towards. So far, we've had 2 series that we've covered here on the stream. Each of those 2 series have had a different map in a lot of the different disciplines, so interested to see where we go. And it looks like we're going to be starting with Nepal, and yeah, interested to see how these teams are going to go at it. I mean, we've seen a lot of kind of similar compositions from a lot of these teams, but from some of the whispers that we've been hearing, I believe one of these teams might be bringing something a little bit different.
Maybe doing something a little bit out of the ordinary to sort of blindside their opposition with a little bit of something to adapt to. And maybe this could be the start of a long and well-fought series. Just a couple of players still clawing their way into the server. And, well, technology isn't cooperating for a couple of them, so one of them will have to make their way back. It's been a big day of the final stages of Open Division, and they'll be fighting a lot for a really prestigious prize.
Yeah, and not only have they been fighting tooth and nail today, but it will continue tomorrow. I mean, the rest of the upper bracket will finish today, but after this series, there will be some more from the lower bracket, because once you drop down there, it is a shark pit, and there are so many more games to which you need to really get through just to even get to survive until tomorrow. But yeah, there's a lot that they're playing for, trying to get towards those finals and just secure themselves the win.
And that will be the biggest prize for them, and hopefully we see a lot of good fights, a lot of good trades, and a lot of good maps in our series. And we've been pretty well tested thus far, at least on the main stream and on our sister stream throughout the day. And this will be our penultimate game for the day between X69 and Jim's Esports. Oh,
yeah, we've had the control maps have been a little bit back and forth. I mean, we've seen a lot of them go to just only the 2 rounds, but even though I think 2 of the matches have gone to just the 2 rounds on the initial control, there's been some fights where one team feels as though they've got the advantage, but then it kind of just falls apart at certain points. Whereas, and so I'm looking into this one. It's like, is it going to be one of the situations where we're just grinding back and forth, trying to get even the slightest of advantages, or is there going to be one team really just stamping their authority right out of the gate and wanting to control this series right from the first map?
Well, perhaps it is a it could either be a war of attrition or a full blown put the foot down and don't let up. It could be I just feel it's going to be a tale of two sides, whether we see a full blown fight or just a full blown run from one side to the other. And the first real indicator and the first true test is on a game mode where it's going to be basically an even fight on both sides, because both the segments are mirrored for each map, give or take, and it will be the control discipline. And yet again, we're going to Nepal. And there's one point that we haven't seen, which I do want to see, and that is the Sanctum, because of the giant pit which envelops a majority of that point.
Yeah, it's interesting. We haven't seen it yet because we've seen a little bit more of Busan, and at the time that we were on Nepal, it did just go to the 2 rounds. But yeah, it's one of those areas where a lot of the displacements do start to really come into a lot more value. Even things like a Roadhog and a Rissa. The Lucio is kind of a bit of a mainstay, but some of those extra displacements can really get some high value. If you can take someone out without necessarily putting all the damage into them, it can really help you out in those fights. But we're finally getting into it, finally starting off this series between X69 and Jim's Esports.
Who is Jim, and why is he just getting a stake in everything? And
that is a good question.
I don't think we can. I don't think we have the time to answer that. It's just he's too big of a mythological being with his bucket hat and his magnificent beard. Anyway, it'll be X69 on the blue side of your UI, and on the red side we will have the omnipotent Jim's Esports, really putting tooth and nail and everything else on the line. And we're just about to go into the assembly phase for the first point in Nepal, which is the village.
Yeah, I'm interested to see whether or not one of these teams is going to bring out the Mei. We've seen it previously on this specific part of Nepal because of the nature of the objective. It can be used if you're expecting a lot of the more durable lineups to try and cut them apart and really pick apart the composition of your opponent, and then just like control the fights from there. But looks like neither side is going to be going for that. It looks like Jim's is going for a very unorthodox composition with the multi DPS, with a lot more mobility and a lot more damage from afar. But they have to be very careful with how they approach the point, because if they get caught in a brawl, I feel like they're just going to get ground into dust by this very beefy lineup that's being brought out by X69.
Yeah, well, hopefully you don't drown in a tide of beef if you are on the side of Jim's Esports. There's a pile drive straight down from Penny. Did not really bear much fruit, but Ike was brought down to half, and now even further still. The Zarya did come close, but in amongst it, X69 did get the first touch and is accruing the first amount of percentage. But Vanessa has put in a little bit of work as the Farah, and despite getting the first touch on the point, X69 are being forced to sweat extremely early on.
Yeah, just being essentially caught like fish in a barrel from all of this damage, all of this AoE from afar. It's just a little bit too much to deal with, especially from all the angles that Jim's Esports are coming in from. It was just very awkward trying to put up all these shields and essentially having damage coming from a different angle. And now Jim's Esports, look at the ultimates that they have. They almost have a full belt, and it's going to be very hard for X69 to come in. They do have an idea of, they have made some adjustments to their composition. We'll have to see if they work out. Here comes Bob right out of the gate, and already Ike is doing a decent amount of work with that switch over, and a good start to this fight for the side of X69. But with Bob there, it's going to be a little bit harder, and here comes a Dragon Strike, as it's just going to run straight through the side of X69. It was looking like a pretty good start, but it could completely shut down. But here comes actually the minefield towards the end, and
yeah, that was a call from Penny. That's a misfire, and that is, that's really unfortunate. It could actually be a bit of a detriment, given the nature of this particular point. That minefield could have had a lot of value going into this next fight, but seeing how quickly he's been building them, Penny's been building them up, I'm it might not be as concerned as initially thought, but Ike will rail the Hanzo down with the pulse pistols, and that will give X69 an early advantage moving into getting on this point. There's the self-destruct from X69, does not bear fruit, and well, a lot of Jibs Esports is set on fire and now ground to dust by a majority of X69's attack, and Ranny just ran everyone down as the wrecking ball. And in amongst all that, the tip did occur, and X69 are now closing the gap.
Yeah, and now we start to see the changes in the composition from Jim's Esports, recognizing the switches made in response to them, so they will in turn make a change towards the more beefy lineup, trying to get themselves onto the point. Here comes the minefield, a little bit of a better situation to be placing that coming out of Rani, and look at the work that it does, and that is going to shut down that offense before it can even get started.
Oh boy, that's essentially, you said the old fish in a barrel adage, that is it to a T. They were chunked up top, the minefield came down from Rani, and well, it's essentially area denial. It's not, they don't mince words when Hammond's voice controller says that infamous line, and just Rani just jumping down and dropping in on everybody. And well, this push has been pushed back. Aside from Penny getting the frag of the Ike, you can basically call it done and dusted.
Yeah, they're not able to get too much, and Earthshatter does come down because they realize that they need to get onto this point. They're down to this overtime as the self-destruct does come through, but they don't have much else to work with. They aren't able to get any of the kills. The Bionade goes down and does a good decent amount of damage, but with the kills starting to come through, even with a bit of a scramble here from the side of Jibs Gaming, they do manage to secure the fight in the end. It looked a little bit messy, but they secure the fight and flip over the point, and now it's time to see how X69 managed to make their way back to the point. They've got very close on several ultimates, which could be big in turning the tide.
And hopefully a couple of the ults don't misfire. Hopefully I don't curse them again. I did that in the last set. You did that a time in the last set as well. There's the minefield from Batty just to get everybody to stand back, and Seraph eats a ton of it. That is a mine put to good use, and well, the entirety of Jibs Esports is bunched in one place, getting debuffed with the Bionade as well. And Funde and Noosh wanting to really, literally batter back the now defense of Jibs Esports. There is an ejection from Shuyuko. Did not get the self-destruct off. The point did tip over to X69, and that will be the force of the village going to X69.
Yeah, that was a very back and forward kind of a situation there. It was looking pretty good in parts to both sides. There were opportunities for Jibs Esports to get the win, but they weren't able to hold on because of the adjustments that they made to try and get themselves back into the fight. They didn't necessarily have the strong setup for when X69 came back at that last ditch effort, so they are going to end up taking that first round. And Cyber, you got your wish. We do end up seeing the Sanctum.
Yay, I can't wait. It'll actually be something to really notice where the first engagement takes place, whether they choose to go in the room which will be away from the point, or more towards the point where there's the small room and the little alcove. Well, that will bring up two different sets of challenges, and we see the pharmacy come out on the side of Jibs Esports just to get right to the roof, and Randy just not wasting any time, pile driving in and doing a ton of damage to get beefed up thanks to the shield in the process, and just keeping the members of Jibs Esports at an arm's length are the members of X69. The point will unlock, and so far you would give it opposition alone, you would give it to X69, but in terms of the frags, they're all going to Jibs Esports because Jim is an all-powerful being and will take anything within his path, and Jim and the crew of Jibs Esports will get the first set of percentage on Sanctum.
Yeah, it seemed like the positioning was reasonable for the side of X69, but a bit of an overextension there from that front line, trying to be a little bit too aggressive in forcing away. James just kind of gave an opportunity over to James to just essentially punish them, and then from there clean up the rest of the fight as Earl manages to take down Thunder. Here comes the missile barrage, manages to take down two, and it pretty much secures this fight simply there and then. and that is just going to cause the rest of the team to just reset themselves. So really nice fight there, not really over investing on anything when it comes to ultimates, essentially just throwing in that barrage and still have some good ones to work with in the bank. So really nice start to this defense here from the side of Jim's Esports, and see how long it's going to take for X69 to work up enough resources to make it good for themselves. As here comes an EMP, they're trying to make the play happen here. Here comes the Valkyrie, they do manage to take that fun rate before you can do anything. And here comes Bob trying to get some work done, but he gets slept, so he's going to be out of action for just a little bit more. Here comes the minefield, and they aren't able to get too much out of it, I believe, as the rest of the team is just falling by the wayside as Jim's Gaming just maintain a stranglehold on this point.
Yeah, and well, they didn't really invest all that much on the side of Jim's Esports either, and that will be even a more scary proposition moving forward. Fundet is angry, will smack Jay out of the air like a moth, and well, X69 are on their last-ditch effort. Randy and Fundet are slowly battering back for the first time in this entire point. Nusha the Mecha and Fundet being the Winston have finally broken through. Just an exercise in patience, but the scoreline was pretty much maxed out for Jim's Esports as they are on 98%, and now we go back the other way. Can X69 continue to hold on to this point? Because now they've gotten into the position to do it, it's going to be a different time to do it. Hack on a Nushin and an EMP to follow up. Jim's are going to be running right through X69 because of the shields going down and everybody being stuck in place. Solid Picnic did get a Boostio treatment just to buy a little bit more time and a little bit more percentage, but that is all for naught. It will tip back over, and will the touch come through? Yes, it will. And well, Penny almost did go down to Ike's pulse bomb, but Ike will be sacrificed to the pit down below. And now, for the side of X69, that would be either out of the point or just trying to get in single file. Solid Picnic just fell into the pit and fell short of recontesting. And we are going to a third, Phoenix.
Yeah, real close there from X69 to get back to the point, but it was just a little bit too much and a little bit too far from getting to the point with how much just essentially just walls of damage and just zone control there was coming out from Jim's Esports. They just couldn't even get to the point, so nicely done there. And now we're back to a little bit more of what we're used to here at the Shrine. We're seeing the more beefy lineup getting picked up for X69. I have to see if gyms are going to go with this style a little even more, because we've been seeing them. We talked about it before this series started. Seems like they're very willing to essentially roll the dice with some of these very damage-centric lineups.
Yeah, we were brought this up. We did get this brought up to us because a couple of co-casters on the CappingTV streams had a look at gyms earlier in the day, and they've had a lot of success and a lot of time with these lineups, and hopefully we get to see more of those in the future. Nevertheless, X69 are gathered up and moving out towards the Spire, and Zerov tried to get a hack off, not really being successful in that endeavor. And well, it's just a full-blown back and forth affair, and Gyms have tried to envelope the opposition onto the point, and a big dynamite will set the opposition right on fire, but it's not going to be all that much value because Shoyo did get dropped from the fight.
Yeah, and although there's a decent amount of damage coming through, the healing is just a little bit too much at this moment. Vanessa tries to get a big value missile barrage, but gets one and then taken down immediately. So just trading back and forth. The point is currently in possession by X69, and they are going to be able to force away Gyms for this first fight. And let's see if they want to make any adjustments. They do have Bob if they want to make a big play at this next push, but I have to see how it plays out. They had an idea of what they wanted to do with that first engagement. It seemed to work out alright, but when the first member went down, a lot of their damage just didn't really hit the mark. And here comes Bob, and here comes an EMP. Nice, hits many members of the X69 lineup. And here comes the Coalescence to really keep everyone topped up. They take down Funday on the front line, and this is going to be an opportunity for them to keep this fight going. They almost had the point captured, but they get forced off it just for the moment. Here comes the minefield to force everyone away from the point, but the Mech Explosion comes through, takes down 2 members, and that could end up just securing this defense for the side of X69 as the fight is going to keep on going. They are just going to shut them out for now.
Oh, they came so close so many times too, with how quickly Penny is getting their hands on these minefields, which usually can basically cement a attack onto a point if the mines are put into areas where members of X69 are holstered up. But now the members of X69 know that they are well and truly up to snuff in terms of holding a defense. They definitely have the power in their hands. There is the Graviton Surge from perhaps a little bit of a misfire there, and they are paying dearly on the side of X69, with a lot of the members being brought low or straight out of the fight.
Yeah, they've managed to pick them apart one by one. Now that, as you mentioned, that Graviton was a little bit mistimed, misplaced, and kind of just misfired all in one. So that is going to be a bit of an unfortunate situation, but the point finally captured by Gems, and have to see if they can kind of hold on with this rather squishy lineup. I mean, it's very likely that X69 just try and rush their way onto the point with all their durability, try and avoid a lot of the long range damage. A lot of the disruption coming through from Penny, doing so much work with this Wrecking Ball. Goes up into the skies, trying to come in from an angle. Here comes the Coalescence to keep the team all nice and topped up, but the barrage comes through. Manages to take down 2, but as again taken down by the Lucio. It's just going to be a 2-for-1, but the Resurrection does come through, and they are going to be trading back and forth. The point is almost going back over to the side of X69, but they do manage to get themselves back onto the point. The Dragon Strike does come through to try and create a little bit more space. The Earth Shatter gets dropped right onto the Wrecking Ball, just having enough of their shenanigans as the point does finally get ticked over. It looks like X69 may have just done it for this map.
And the Tracer did try to get the touch, but got completely denied and blown away. And that'll be X69 putting an X in the checkbox that says, "Did you win Nepal?" Yes, they did, and it took 3 sets to do it, and they were definitely forced to sweat for a good portion of it, but they got it all done in the end. And now the power of choice in terms of where this set goes is in the power of Jim's Esports as to where we go next.
Yeah, they have the choice of Dorado and Route 66. We haven't seen Route 66 over the course of today, so I wouldn't be too surprised if we end up seeing Dorado yet again. But yeah, considering the compositions that Jim's Esports has been bringing out, I wouldn't be too disappointed in seeing either of the escort maps, to be quite honest, because looking at those very damage-centric compositions, they require an awful lot of coordination and picking the targets when you see them, and you need that damage to really stick. And there were moments where it was working out really well for them, and albeit with a little bit of help from X69 and some kind of misplaced ultimates, but Jim's Esports, there was some moments where it worked out really well, but the consistency of the very beefy lineup that X69 were bringing out just seemed to come through in the end.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that will keep going for the side of X69 to stay on their winning ways, but it's going to come into an interesting map of 3 different stanzas depending on the defense.
Yeah, and I believe the team names would have switched, because I'm pretty sure Penny was on the Wrecking Ball but is now on blue. I'm pretty sure.
We may have had a bit of a fluff with the setup of the lobby. We'll have to double check for that.
But anyway, coming into Route 66, we haven't seen it over the course of today, and it was just there's a confirmation that yes, so we do have Jim's Esports now on the blue with X69 on the red. It will still have a lot of the same names as before, so it will still say is one thing, but it is all lying in the game. So we do have, who is it going to be? It is going to be the red side on attack first. So it will be X69. Interested to see what they're going to come at it with. Whereas on the defense, they are going to be sticking with their very damage-centric lineup here from Gems.
And so they won't switch in-game, and... Oh, we had an error with the names, but I think everything is okay.
It seems the names are right now, so we just making sure that everything is going to be all right, I guess.
Yeah, I hate for things to go astray. Well, knowing the way some things go, I know one of us is going to do a bit of a flub and put the team on the wrong side, and that'd be a bit rough.
Yeah, that'd probably be me. I did that in one of the earlier series.
Looks like we're good to go now.
Yeah, so just as a quick refresher, we have Jim's Esports on the blue and X69 Gaming on the red.
Correct. X69 will be on the attack first.
Alrighty, and again, just looking at the composition that Jim's is going to be running, they are still going with that. I don't even know what to call it. It's just squishy. It's just DPS out the wazoo. It's got a wrecking ball for disruption. I really don't know how to really describe it.
We could call it the flex tape setup because it's a lot of damage, but that could be extremely dated whenever someone watches this in the future, so I don't really know what to call it.
Yeah, there's got to be a name for it somewhere that someone has made up, or someone will eventually, but for right now, Gyms are going with the very damage-heavy lineup. Have to see how this offense is going to start out. They are kind of poking and prodding, seeing what's going to come out, see what they're going to be put up against when they start seeing all of those DPS members just firing logs at them. Yeah, and Penny just a little bit too far forward, and this is going to give a lot of space over to the side of X69, and we can see just on the kill feed a lot of red, a lot of kills, and it's allowing this payload to move completely unimpeded.
Yeah, and well, the resurrection from Jay did get used on the Farah, and perhaps it was a little bit too early for that because, well, that's going to be offline for another 30 seconds or so. Penny has swung in front of Big Oz and decided to engage and got focused down extremely hard, but is up in the fight. But the feed is now looking a very, very aggressive shade of red, and Shouko is only left on the payload, just trying to bleed time, and got zapped to death by Fundray. And now Earl will get a party gift with the dynamite, and just looking for the positioning. Doesn't look like another touch will take place. No, it will not, and that will be the first point going to X69. A big dragon strike right onto the payload. Perhaps a little bit late for that, or just the sign of a switch?
That was ambitious, but probably the sign of a potential switch, or probably just hoping for the best. But here comes the engagement here coming out from the side of X69. They've already taken down one, but they've lost two in return. Really nice response here from Gyms as they are trying to just set up any kind of defense, and it's working out so far. And they might be able to stall out at this point for the first time in this round after being a little bit over eager there on the defense from Penny. They're able to finally get something to stick and really dig their heels in, and at a point where it looks like they could very well make it difficult for the side of X69 to really make it towards that payload.
Wow, and Randy actually got caught mid-pile drive as well. Earl has sent Bob to do a little bit of work. We'll get Ike to take a seat, and Fundray did get the reply by getting a little bit angry and swatting the moth, and also getting one onto Zerif. So trade's going both ways. There is the minefield going down by Penny, and did not get all that much. His boy extremely low as well, and finally given their marching orders. And despite that little bit of life coming in from Jim's Esports, this payload will be back on track, moving towards the second point. But Gyms are definitely well equipped to recontest.
Yeah, they have a few good tools that they can work with, but looking at the other side, There's a little bit more that they can work with as here comes this re-engage. This payload is still rolling and they're not really being contested all that much. They're trying to make their way towards the point, but there's just losing members before they get anywhere near it. Fundray is just doing so much work on this Winston, just putting up a complete wall and making it damn near impossible for gyms to get any work done, trying to set up these long-range DPS targets, and they're just not getting anything done out of it.
And Vanessa decided to go out just after the gate was going up and then down again, just to keep everybody honest, but ended up going down extremely quickly, and that is the sign that they are going to switch. Now the Brigitte is on the field. Earl does have Bob at the ready and is decided to go set a stage, just run right through it. Oh, maybe not ending up in the best of spots, ending up in the corridor as opposed to sitting on the payload. So Bob just sure he's an aggressive man, but when he runs in a straight line, it's a little bit of a rough time, and because of that and many other factors, Jim's Esports, their defense is being peeled away, and this payload is going straight through the final checkpoint in Route 66, completely uncontested.
Yeah, this has been a pretty damn good time here coming out from X69. Barely ever stopped. There's a little bit of a stumble on that second point, but here comes the engagement. The Nano Boost does get used onto Fundray as he is just a man on a mission. The Graviton gets used, manages to pick up a couple of members, and Fundray just continuing to fill out this kill feed, and it looks like there's no one able to stand up as they just clean up everyone left, right, and center. They're going to be able to get to this first point. They do manage to hold everyone away from it and secure themselves a very quick time here on Route 66.
And good thing to note as well, there was a trade charge between both of the Reinhardts, because there was the defending Reinhardt that was just coming out of spawn and then got knocked down for the last 2 seconds. That pretty much prevented a recontest from occurring, at least from the left-hand side of the defender's spawn.
Yeah, and now we have to see whether or not Jim's Esports are going to be able to match that. They need to, they just, if they want to keep this map alive, they need to be able to push all the way through. And to be honest, quite often that is a bit of a rough task. But X69 just made it look fairly mundane with how efficiently they're able to push straight through each and every checkpoint.
And sometimes that's all it takes, just a well-oiled machine, a well-put-together unit, and as soon as they all come together, they form a certain robot, which I don't think we have the rights to say, but I'm pretty sure you know the one that I am alluding to. At any juncture, we see Jim's Esports. They've been favoring a lot of the DPS compositions, but now looking at what they have for their first offering, it'll be one of the most tried and true setups that has been dominating the Overwatch landscape for quite some time now. We're seeing pretty much a mirror on both sides now, and we're seeing a lot of butting heads. We're going to see another duel take place very shortly.
Yeah, the only difference being that Poe is opting for the Moira rather than the Zenyatta, so they'll have a little bit of extra healing, some more damage, but lacking the Discord Orb might very well be the big difference between these two, as we do get this first engagement, as it's just, as we've been saying time and time again with these kinds of compositions, it's just nickeling and diming for each and every inch that you can find until there's the slightest of advantages, at which point you can just roll all the way through, as Penny gets a little bit separated from the rest of the team, and it allows the team to just move their way forward. Shady comes out as well, does a coalescence. It's just a 1-for-1 so far, but with the front line down from the side of X69, it's allowing the blue side to just keep on rolling the way through. Without the front line, they just can't really stand up to a lot of the damage being put through by this Jim's Esports lineup. But now that Fundray is back, they're trying to make their way back in. The rally does get used, the charges clank, so they end up going to the ground as a Transcendence does get used essentially just to retreat. Whoa. The team is, there goes a charge, takes the man down with the ship, as that is just going to be a trade 1-for-1, but it does stall out this offense for now.
Well, in dramatic fashion too, Penny just got essentially pulled down into the clutches of the canyon on the right-hand side, and if you wanted theatrics, that's exactly how you do it. But that gives X69 a value, a potential point to really dig in now. And now Jim's Esports have to advance. They can't do that with the Graviton Surge in play. There is the self-destruct to follow up. It only did the ejection, but it did enough damage to basically nullify this entire attack. And well, it was essentially done as soon as the Graviton went down. Diva set the line with the self-destruct, and well, Jim's gonna have to draw up a brand new plan.
Yeah, all they used were those two ultimates just to essentially set up the play and have the rest of the basic abilities and just basic shots go straight through it and clean up that fight. They still have some good ones to work with. The Earth Shatter and also the Coalescence will really be useful in this next fight, as here comes the Shatter, knocks several down to the ground as they are going to try and just roll their way through for yet another fight, as it looks like Gyms are trying to get away as quick as possible, trying to reset because they're starting to run out of time here. So it's only a minute and a half left.
Yeah, and perhaps we could be running into the best chance for Jim's Esports though. Look at the ultimates that they do have on offer. They have Rally, they have Self-Destruct, they have Shatter, they're close to a Graviton Surge as well on Vanessa.
Close on all of them, to be quite honest. So as you mentioned, this is probably their best opportunity. They are going to be getting onto the point. The Rally Up does get used on both sides as they make their way through. Graviton does manage to pick up so many members of the red team, and it picks up 3 in the explosion, also gets the mech, and that should secure them at least this first point. That's what they needed to see to secure themselves a fight finally, and now we'll have to see just how much they can do with this momentum.
And well, it's a very efficient combination. It has been for quite some time. What was colloquially known by some as the bigger bang. Compared to the Pulse Bomb, you have a Self-Destruct, which hurts a lot more and makes a much bigger earth-shattering kaboom. And just as the gate goes up and the payload rolls through, it looks like X69 are really wanting to keep this isolated into the tunnel. And there is a big earth shatter knocking down this attack from Jim's Esports. And just this war of attrition is continuing, but keep an eye on Penny, still having the Earth Shatter at hand for themselves. There is the Graviton Surge from Ike, Self-Destruct to follow from Nusha's claim the giant attack of Penny, so there is going to be no Earth Shattering for you, my good man. And that is X69 digging in and making this payload stay put, and this stagger is going to be, well, not as rough as it could have been, but still running into just about 2 minutes before the next engage.
Yeah, a nice re-engage there from the side of X69, and now they're in a position where they can theoretically shut out this offense here and now because of the corridors coming through and the choke points. They can make it very hard for the defense to come back through, but here comes the Graviton and ultimates and a lot of defensive plays being used immediately to try and keep everyone alive. An Earth Shatter did go down from Penny, didn't get any value out of it. Here comes an Earth Shatter, drops 2 to the ground, and they are just going to go follow through with this. The Coalescence is just ripping through everyone left, right, and center. They do manage to get a couple in return, but it looks like this fight is just going to be... Oh, actually, as I say that, the Transcendence comes out for the side of Gyms, and they are going to try and use this to re-engage, force their way back onto the cart and keep it moving, and it looks like they're finally able to get the fight to go their way after trading back and forth for so long.
Well, that's what patience will do, and well, thanks to Shouko, he was actually just remaking like right in the middle of the fight. Lucky for them, lucky for the side of Jim's Esports, the mech could actually come down. And now looking at the state of affairs in terms of ult economy, Jim's Esports are in the driver's seat to keep this payload moving without much hindrance, just looking at what they've got. There is the Graviton Surge going, both of them going in stereo, and there is Shouko dropping the bomb. Noosh as well will claim a pair, and well, they were hoping on the side of Jim's Esports to keep the payload moving towards the giant gate and moving on to the 3rd checkpoint, but it looks like it got stopped stone dead by X69, and now it is crunch time on both sides for this map.
Yeah, and Penny did end up using that Earth Shadow and is actually switching over to the Wrecking Ball, understanding that they have to be a little bit more rushed in their approach. They can't have that same measured style with the very beefy lineup. Here comes the Wrecking Ball, doesn't manage to land. The slam ended up just smacking it right into the roof of that building. You can fit so many things in that I've completely lost the train of thought. Anyway, the fight is going to keep on going. They managed to get onto the point, but the Earth Shatter is going to put so many people onto the ground. They're trying to get anyone onto the point, but with this squishy lineup, they're not able to get anyone there for any considerable amount of time. And here comes the Missile Barrage. Does manage to pick up a couple, but will they be able to keep this going? As here comes Rani to stall out the point. And throughout all this, even though it seemed a little bit messy, they are able to secure themselves a second checkpoint.
This has become the set and day for Caster Curse, I swear.
I'm doing so many of these, like...
You're on the count of like 3 from my observation. I know I've done
just
at least
from this
one.
series, to be honest.
Oh boy, it's made for a compelling story at the very least. And now the payload's starting to move the corner. There was the Dragon Strike from Seraph, does not get much value, but gets enough people to scatter away. And, well, there is Bob's Q to stage left, ends up going right into the main corridor and keeps the X69 defense at bay. But the time will not be on Jim's Esports side. We're running into 45 seconds, and now it's basically do or die for Jim's Esports to keep this map going, because they are under time bank, and X69 are still loading themselves to bear to dig in this defense. It will have to be a full-blown successful experiment for Jim's Esports to have all this fall in their favor. There is the Valkyrie from Jay to keep this attack alive.
Or here comes the
Big
minefield to really split everyone apart as Ultimate's dropping left, right, and center. Here comes the Missile Barrage, does just crack right through that shield. Sound Barrier is in a bit of an awkward position, doesn't get enough of the members as Sound Barrier, and also the Transcendence gets used, and they're trying to just force away the squishy members. Vanessa and Jay trying to keep close to that payload. They do manage to keep it ticking into overtime, but with all the, well, I say all the tanks, the single tank not in the fight as of yet, does finally get there, does manage to get a slam to keep this fight going, and they're trading back and forth, but it looks like this defense is just holding on at the moment, and they're trying to just get this pesky little wrecking ball away from it. And with that one down, no one's able to get anywhere near the payload. They do manage to just dart their way onto it, but that should be it. They do manage to hold on just in the nick of time, and X69 go up 2-0 in this series.
It took a lot of scrappy fights and a lot of work to get things to fall their way, but X69 finally had it all fall into place. But to the credit of Jim's Esports, they can thank their Farah quite heavily for basically getting them into that point. It was Vanessa who was playing the Farah, who basically used the positioning and the barrage to basically catch X69 napping, because they almost thought for sure that they had held them out, but it was not the case. And now Jim's Esports have the choice of map, and now they have to sweep all the way back to keep themselves in the upper bracket.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a tough task. And as you mentioned, they had some good opportunities. They were so close to bringing it all the way through, even after a bit of a rough start to that round. But they have to reset. They have to realign themselves coming in to this third map, either Hanamura or Volskaya. You can very much see them go with those DPS heavy lineups. Yet again, it can work on something like a 2CP. It can be a little bit awkward trying to push through the very beefy lineups that we have been seeing out of X69. They just go with the more consistent style, and it's just working out for them more times than not. Whereas Jim's Esports, yeah, they had this very cool and interesting and inventive style with this multi DPS, but when it doesn't work, it really just collapses.
And that's because of the low health pools of all the DPS characters. Yeah, they can churn out a ton of damage, but they can't take a lot. Like the average for most of that is 200. And yeah, there's the adaptable shield from Hammond, who can be a real pest, but that doesn't really cover all your bases. And now Jim's Esports are left with only 1 life left before being dropped down to the lower bracket. And it looks like we are now on Hanamura, and it's a beautiful piece of architecture.
Absolutely, and we saw a match of Hanamura early in the day. It was a bit of a grind at point B in one of the rounds, and then in the second round, it was just a complete and utter wiping. So we'll have to see how this one is going to differ, whether or not we're going to see a lot of quick captures or a lot of steady progress and a bit of grinding that we usually see in those rather beefy lineups. But I would suspect that Jims is going to go with that very DPS heavy lineup, as it looks like they are going to be coming out on defense first with it. Let's see how it works out for them this time.
And I'm really looking forward to it, especially with Vanessa on the Hanzo. And basically just really keeping everybody stretched. So Yuko will be closing the gap because of the mobility on Tracer. You see Ash and Vanessa would be more than likely just trying to play recon and really keeping this entire attack at arm's length. And Fundray being the Sombra on the attacking side. X69 will be running out of the arcade, and Fundray will be doing the call and making the play very, very shortly, running right through the main gate. And definitely calling this out and saying, yeah, what should we do? This is what we shall do. Oh!
Going for more of a dive composition.
Here we go.
Interesting. They are going to go for a bit more of an aggressive style. Just make their way onto the point, try and get straight past any potential wall of DPS being thrown out there. Yeah, going very far forward. The team isn't there to help out yet, thanks to Shoko being a bit of a nuisance to the rest of the team. They're trying to make their way through the gate, but so far, only a member here and there have been able to, as Ike gets taken down. That's going to be the first frag of this engagement. But they're going to keep on trying to make their way through. The slam does come as the rest of the dive is trying to follow onto the support members of Jim's Esports, as it's actually just the single support, but in response, it's just going to be damage for days coming out. But the trading is actually working out quite nicely, but it's looking a little bit better for the side of the defense.
It is, and you see Penny just rolling around the bell as the wrecking ball. And still surviving, and there it is, the elongated engagement, and now to be a little bit of a stagger now. It was looking to be one, but now, oh boy, it's going at such a fast pace. It's looking basically as even as you could have liked, but to the one credit of Jim's Esports, they haven't accrued that third on the side of X69 just yet. They've just fallen so short in a big point-blank sleep from Poe. We'll set the Tracer down for a brief interim, but now after such an elongated fight, Jim's Esports have come up on top for it, and they didn't even surrender a third.
Yeah, really nicely done there. Shoko doing the vast majority of the heavy lifting. Just managed to take members out left, right, and center. He's even got another pulse bomb ready for this next fight, as well as a missile barrage. But looking at the other side, at what X69 are bringing to the table, they almost have a full belt of ultimates to see how they're going to be able to use them. Here comes the nano boost onto the monkeys. He's just going to start slapping people off that higher ground. The Ana has already gone down, but they have used a lot of the tools just to try and get onto the point, and it's not really working out for them so far.
Definitely not. And Shiguko used the pulse bomb and basically eradicated one of the members of the X69 attack, so that will be pretty much your final for that push at the very least. And well, this is holding as tight as a drum. Jim's Esports have essentially shut out X69, and we're running to just about 1 minute remaining. And looking at X69's current state of affairs, it's going to be a really tough slog.
Yeah, this is going to be a bit of an effort. They make their way through. Here comes the missile barrage. Goes straight onto Rani, as has absolutely nothing to deal with that. And another kill going over, as Poe going down very early in a lot of these fights. Not having that Ana, not having the Bionades, the sleeps, and the extra healing has been so detrimental in a lot of these fights, as Shoko is, just, as I said earlier, is doing a lot of the heavy lifting, does finally get taken down, and it looks like this fight will finally go in favor of X69, and they can actually secure this first point.
They've gotten one part of their win condition and took down to the final 30 to do it. But now, would you say that it's possible to do a snowball with their current composition, but with Noosh being ejected, I don't think that's likely. They're gonna have to
Yeah.
stay put.
It does not look all that likely, and with how long it had taken for them to just get there, it very much is not a likely situation for them to just walk all the way through. But I say that, and they're just going to go straight in. They've already picked up a couple of the DPS members with the Ash and the Hunter going down, but Bob is still a fixture on the point as he does finally manage to pick someone up. Trading back and forward, but you have to wait and see whether or not any team is able to get a significant advantage as Ike manages to pick up 2 members, picks up both of the pharmacy, but with the respawn times being much more favorable to the defense, they do manage to push them away before the first tick even managed to get secured.
And that'll be good for Jim's Esports in the near future. Just really trying to dig in with a point as vast as the second on Hanamura and just seeing it be wide open and have plenty of places to really scout out the forthcoming attack. And Zeref is really being a pest with the Farah at the moment. There is the Dragon Strike from Vanessa to part everybody away. Earl will take out Fundray, and Penny will say, "I'm the better hamster," to Rani. And well, Gyms are going to be buying at least another 30 seconds, if not more, because of that successful defense.
Yeah, a nice defense there, just kind of catching them off guard with the Reaper, the switch over to the Reaper, and I'm not sure if they'll force out some changes in composition, as we can see Poe going over to the Moira, Ike back over to the Zaya, Rani over to the Brigitte, so they just want to go for their tried and true style. It's worked for them in the past, and have to see whether or not they're able to get it to work here. As the minefield gets dropped right at the front door, and look at the damage as the Lucio and also the Zaya get cleaned up immediately, and that is going to shut that down before it could even start.
So small, so cute, so deadly. That is what a good wrecking ball can be, and it was spearheaded by a local player by the name of Trill, being one of the first proficient wrecking ball players, and really put that on the map for the rest of them. But still, the side of X69 is still wanting to grind this out. There is Noosh throwing out the self-destruct, maybe just a remake, does not get an official one. Gets dinked by Earl, but still ends up calling the mech back down. And just as quickly as it came down, it got broken away again. Earl called in Bob to do a little bit of the theatrics, but it is not so much avail. And X69 have finally gotten a strong arm on the point and is slowly starting to at least try to bleed time and prevent personnel from touching the point. That is the first, third accrued, close to a second as one of the members does get the touch on the side of Jim's Esports.
Yeah, it's just scrambling defense at this point, even to switch over to the Bastion, but they need to get people onto the point. But as I say that, they don't necessarily need to get onto the point where they can just kill literally everyone, as they finally managed to secure themselves some good positioning, some good crossfires, and make it very hard for that X69 lineup to just set their feet on the point. And they finally managed to force them off it. With 50 seconds left in this round, they're getting reasonably close they got reasonably close to that second tick, but it just was not enough. I have to see if that is going to come back to bite them.
Take a look at Shogo. He went to Symmetra briefly to put Vanessa up on the high ground as the Bastion, and immediately got sniffed out by the side of X69. Formidable attempted at a little bit of a unique strat, but it did not end up paying off dividends. Jay will use the Resurrect to bring Vanessa back into the fight. There is the convalescence out from Poe to say, bow down to me and my superior science, and Vanessa in tank form will break this entire attack. And well, Jim's Esports formed into a giant omnipotent being, and Jim is what to do. And that will be the end of the attack for X69.
That was a very inventive way to end out that round for the side of Jim's Esports. We were talking about their very, it's almost like a very flamboyant style that they've been running with, and that very much runs true with that Bastion towards the end, getting boosted up to the high ground. Sure, got taken down once, but with the Resurrection was able to come through and make the big impact at the end of the day. And now we have to see whether or not Jim's Esports will be able to essentially hit that marker, or they'll be going into the lower bracket.
And I really want Jim's Esports to stay in the upper bracket just because of what we've seen with their compositions and their unique style of play. It's been an absolute thrill to watch.
Yeah, just not just defaulting back to what we've been seeing time and time again. Sure, it might get a little bit more consistency. You might have a little bit more consistency in a lot of the fights if you do go for the more beefy style that we have been seeing time and time again for the past couple of months. But they're trying out these new things that, yes, it sometimes doesn't work, but it also sometimes just does. Sometimes you just pick apart a member and then you can pick up another and then the third and then you can just roll through from there. So it doesn't necessarily have the same consistency, but it can work, and I'm very excited to see it. Well, I hope it can work out at least a couple more times.
Well, when it works with the capital W O R K and S to follow it. Penny trying to swing in, didn't quite get all of it, but well, just sneak onto the point.
Bit of a
That's
bit of a lift.
mission accomplished anyway. And now with that, Penny has had to retreat and get a little bit further topped up by the Jim's Esports Cohawks. Both the Traces actually got into a bit of a tangle and came out at a little bit of a stalemate as well. But in terms of the frags, it looks like X6 are putting the defense in extremely early on, and Ronnie just ran down Jay. And well, this first run has fallen to the favor of X69.
Yeah, a nice start to this defense, and actually a little bit of a switch out, moving over to the Reaper for the side of Earl, and wanting to take down those frontliners, understanding that maybe not wanting to put the Reaper into the biggest of beefiest of lineups, and just picking apart those solitary members on the front line. As you can see, there's Seraph taking down Fundray. That's giving an opportunity over to the blue side to make their way towards the point, as they also managed to take down Ike, and it's a good opportunity for them to move their way through, trying to get the boop off. But they do make, oh, the nano boost went onto Rani, but got knocked straight off and into the abyss. So that was a completely nullified ultimate there, coming out from the members of Jim's Esports, and that is going to secure themselves this first point.
If you're going to keep an eye on the scorecard for Hammond Bowling, we would call that a strike and a free pass into the next frame. And he actually has the minefield at the ready too. A lot of the Jim's Esports cohorts are very well equipped to keep this fight going and moving straight onto the point before the defense really knows what hits them.
Yeah, and the minefield gets dropped on the high ground, but there isn't really anyone up there. They try and make their way towards the point with the single member and just setting up with all the damage around the point, trying to set up crossfires and make it as awkward as possible for the defense to really set their feet, or even be aware of which areas they need to be taken care of. As here comes a Death Blossom, doesn't really get too much out of it as Ryan just bops him away with the shield bash.
And perhaps that might not have been the best thing. There was the barrage from Zeref, but it did not bear that much fruit. And then the right hand of Jay did end up meeting their demise, so that pharmacy is completely gone. And now Earl in a room on his own and got booped back by Stolen Picnic on the Lucio, and now Jim's Esports finally have to recoil. But for the record, Jim's Esports only has to match the percentage on the second point to stay alive in the series, and they are well equipped to do it. Just with this stick and move style of attack between the Tracer and the Wrecking Ball.
Yeah, and they are managed to get their way to the point, almost have that first third, but they does get interrupted. They're just trading back and forth. Shoko being an absolute nuisance to the side of X69, but does finally get taken out as Ike switch over to the McCree and is already making an immediate impact.
Big impact and a big setting sun for the fitting cowboy now. And already has the Deadeye at the ready. And Poe actually has the Coalesce, it's the self-destruct as well, and Noosh. So this defense is well equipped for the time being, but it could be easily displaced should things fall their way. Penny does have the minefield to go. There is the Dragon Strike right underneath Riley's feet and gets swept away by the pairing dragons running right through things. Earl will get rid of the counterpart in Ike. Sorry, you're not part of the Deadlock gang anymore. Jim's Esports are now running right through this defense, and it is only the Coalescence keeping everybody up in the tide. And yeah, it did look good for the defense in the last stanza, but at this point in time, it is only a matter of time before either the reinforcements come or we are keeping this series alive and moving on to the next chapter.
Oh, a good explosion does clear out a lot of the nuisance on the point. They do manage to get in there in time, but with so much damage being thrown around, they just get completely shredded before they can get anything done. And Jim's Esports, as you mentioned, they're keeping this alive.
And in a theatric style too, just flat out barreling straight through, and an inventive use of the Dragon Strike as well. As soon as the Sonic Arrow came out, it was basically, yeah, they're all bunched there. They don't have the reaction, they don't have the chance to move or the time to move, and that was pretty much the cue to go for the rest of Jim's Esports. They just enveloped the defense and sucked it into the black hole, and they went to the Shadow Zone. And now Jim's Esports have a score on the board. It's 2-1 in favor of X69, but X69 have the choice between the next discipline, which will be hybrid.
Yeah, the choice between Blizzard World and Numbani. It looks like it's going to be Blizzard World. I'm very interested to see how this style is going to match up on this map.
Yeah, and it's one of my favorite maps to even observe, not only because it looks pretty, but because of how many unique stanzas each point has. Like the first point that you actually have to capture has a similar alcove to, say, Volskaya. It's at a similar kind of layout, but that's gotten a little bit of added layers to it because of the amount of flanks that you can do, as well as both attackers and defenders.
Yeah, and to be honest, we've seen that be a bit of a detriment because, like, with this compositional style that Jim's Esports has been running, we saw something very similar, was essentially the same style used on this specific map from, I believe it was the Sandfraggers a couple of weeks ago, and it worked to devastating effect. Just everyone stacked up in that little alcove, and all of a sudden you've got dynamite, you've got Pharaoh rockets, you've got damage coming out the wazoo and just being shoved right into that small little alcove, and with nowhere to go.
Oh, it hurts.
It looked painful for the defense, but we'll have to see how it goes this time, as we do have. It is going to be Jim's Esports on defense first. Let's see if their offense-heavy lineup is going to be able to hold up to what X69 are going to be bringing at them.
And Earl's decided to retire Ash for the moment, has decided to go with the Reaper, and we see Cho go on the Tracer once more and just be the old stick and move. A lot of damage, but if this ends up getting squashed by the giant Moira-headed tank that is on deck for X69, we could be in for very short order. But Zeref laying down the damage extremely early on, and that's exactly what the side of Jim's Esports want. Just keep everybody at an arm's reach. There's the full engage for Petty as well.
Yeah, really nice engage. Just a little bit of disruption. Try and give some room to the rest of the team to start poking and prodding at some of those squishy members around the side, as X69 have made their way towards the point, but with Penny essentially the only vanguard there to stand on the front line, they are able to at least take down Fundray, and that takes out a lot of the meat of that lineup. But Rane does manage to get the return kill onto Shoko, but with everyone just kind of scattered to the wind and starting to lose out, the damage is just a little bit too strong out from the side of Jim's Esports, but they do manage to get one in return. The Coalescence does come through, and it's just Earl left on the point, so it looks like X69 may have done just enough to secure themselves a very significant early game fight.
Yeah, and a big point for Earl as well. He was in an engagement with the Brigitte of Rani and was on the way in retreating on the way in Wraith form, and was on single-digit HP, and just as the health pack had ticked over to refresh, he ended up getting his hands on it, and that I think would play a huge role as to why Earl was able to come back and recontest. Because if he didn't go down, it could have been a lot worse for them. Jay will pull out the Valkyrie and a big engage from Penny. Just trying to get free damage while the cart is in a precarious position right at the gates.
Yeah, and Thunder actually just charges all the way back out of the fight, but not far enough. As he gets taken down, and Ike also goes down. So a nice, aggressive defense set up here from the side of Jim's Esports. See if they're going to be able to hold on to this for much longer, as we just have Earl just firing away those shots from afar, making it just an awkward situation. Here comes a Dragon Strike. Have to get out or dodge, not get caught up by that. Here comes the rally up here for the side of X69, but they all get tagged up by the TNT. They use the Graviton just to take down Penny, understanding the threat or the annoyance that that little hamster has been putting onto them. They do manage to take trade 1-for-1 thanks to that rocket barrage, a little bit of self-inflicted pain. As they do manage to take down Noosh, but at this point, the Pellet has been pushing throughout all of this because they haven't really been contested on the ground. But here comes Bob, and this could be a signal for them to really recontest, as there's been ultimates thrown left, right, and center, but so far, not too much has been occurring, as we do finally have Penny going down, and with that, this could allow this Pellet to just keep on moving, because we see it time and time again, Simon. It's like once the Wrecking Ball goes down, there's no one around to really contest the point.
And it's basically a live or die by this extremely aggressive strat. But Penny has decided to roll in and drop the minefield right near the payload, and make it basically don't step here. It is going to hurt like mad. But a big part of Earl and their play, and Vanessa actually scalps a pair with the storm bow and the regular bow, and Earl gets the parting frag, so they finally get their footing, do Jim's Esports. And a big note is Earl in those engagements was getting plenty of dots, plenty of damage over time onto the rest of X69, and already has Bob called down should the need arise, and it might do very soon.
Yeah, I mean, look at the ultimates available for both sides. It's very much looking in favor of Jim's Esports. Here comes Bob right in the middle, does get knocked down immediately as the Dragon Strike, Dragon Strike does get used right at the beginning of it to try and displace them from the high ground. Ultimate's being popped left, right, and center. The barrage does come through to take one down, but gets traded back immediately. The explosion does get used, does manage to take down the Mercy, and that is, we're talking about the front line with the Wrecking Ball being the only one there for the side of Jim's Esports. But when that Mercy goes down, you have zero healing. It makes it very hard for them to stick around, but sometimes you don't need healing. All you need is just a little bit more damage, as Vanessa is just taking names left, right, and center and making it incredibly hard. But as I say that, Randy just goes ham and just takes down 3 in these close corridors.
And that is one of the scariest places to be, with a Brigitte who's angry, trying to get the attack going, and ends up using the flails right through the face of both sides. There is Shoko getting a pair with the pulse bomb, keeping the defense up for the time being. The second point has not officially ticked over, so that is to Jim's Esports' benefit. And it took a long time and a fair few close calls there, but Jim's will hold strong, but only just.
Yeah, and this is going to be the real difficult situation here for X69. Just getting to the payload at this stage, because of how long range a lot of the damage is coming through. They are just having to come around, as a good TNT shot does manage to pick up so many members, but a great fire strike follow-up onto the Graviton is going to completely lock out so much of this lineup, as they finally managed to get themselves to the second checkpoint, Cyber, and they're just pushing all the way through, trying to give themselves as much space to work with.
Yeah, and Noosh actually decided to not do the quick reset, but knowing they're close enough to call down another mech, decided to hang around, get a little bit of pepper damage in, and then call the mech back down. Now we move into the Catacombs, the third part of Blizzard World, and there's a big engage by Penny. Stunned up, being basically centered and absolutely demolished and put back the scrap. Oh, poor Penny. Just getting a really rough treatment. And now, even though there is Bob at the ready, there's the barrage almost ready to go. And almost the Valkyrie as well for Jim's Esports. If Earl can actually get the frag onto that Zarya, it could have turned out very differently, but Bob will be called to arms. There is the convalescence in reply.
Yeah, really nicely done here from the side of X69 as here comes the barrage, manages to take down Poe, didn't turn around in time as Stolen Picnic ends up getting taken down as well, so that's 2 of the supports of X69, and now they have to be very careful as a good Pulse Node manages to take down the front line, and that is just going to signal retreat. They have to get out of there before they lose any more members. They don't have the time to spare. They have to be very cautious with how they approach this next fight because they don't have the time. They're down to 30 seconds left. They have to get towards the point, at least make sure that they're going to be securing overtime for themselves. Here comes the rally up, but here comes the TNT trying to get some work done as they're going to be under fire from all these different angles. The sound barrier does get dropped, and a lot of kills going in favor of the side of X69, and throughout all of this, the payload is going to be keeping on moving as the Dragon Strike does get flown straight through the point, but there's no one trying to stall out the progression of this payload. They do have Penny there, but gets charged straight into the wall, and each and every time, oh, here comes the Graviton. It does lock enough of the members in it, even though Jackie is trying to get something done, he's just not able to as a single Mercy, and that is actually going to be the full push coming through from the side of X69.
Oh, and take a breath, because it got extremely chaotic, extremely hairy, but X69 finally pulled out that win, and a bit sad that the defending Dragon Strike did not bear as much fruit as they probably would have wanted. Got the follow-up onto the Lucio by putting a arrow right through their headphones of the Lucio, but it was not to be. And finally, yeah, they bled the clock and got into OT, but the side of X69 ended up getting the full push, and that's bought the side of X69 a lot of lifelines to finish the day on a high.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I really did like from Fundray on the Reinhardt, understanding that you have an Earth Shatter, your only frontline to go up against is that Wrecking Ball. There's no point in looking for the hero 3-4 man Earth Shatter. They saw that once they take down that Wrecking Ball on the front line, it was much more free for them to push through. So sure, it looked a little bit odd just continuously using those Earth Shatters on just the single member, but it worked out incredibly well because they were able to just extract so many advantages just from taking out that one character.
And they knew that it was basically the center point for the entire structure of the team. As soon as that was taken out, the integrity of the entire composition was severely hindered because of it. And now the gates are down, and Jim's Esports are fighting to stay up in the upper bracket. And we are now underway for the second half of Blizzard World. And wow, a lot of aggression coming out early from Jim's.
Yep, that very aggressive composition, and this is that situation I was a little bit worried about potentially being the fish in a barrel. Have to be very cautious that they don't just set themselves up for failure, as a lot of the shooting has been cracked, as a lot of the damage comes through, as Fundray is going to get taken down, and this is going to be a very dangerous situation. No one else has gone down just yet, but a lot of health bars going up and down and all around, as the members of Jim's Esports are starting to make their way towards the point, trying to force their way, impose their will onto this defensive lineup. But Noosh does manage to take down Penny, a really nice kill there, and gets another one really nicely done here from the D.Va player, and really allowing this defense to get set up once again. Fundray, even though he did go down first, didn't necessarily punish the team too bad for it.
No, and well, that was essentially a one and done position from Jim's Esports. They could be well and truly tempted to try again if the side of X69 end up gathered in the alcove once more near the point. And looking at the outlines here, it looks like that might take place, and with ultimates at the ready for a good majority, that could be the cue. And there is Vanessa letting a Dragon Strike go, and just as a trio of frags with 3 different players will go down, and well, that's all they needed on the side of Jim's Esports. Yeah, we have the ults in pocket, just use them, and then that is a seize point with authority.
Yeah, that seems rather clean. And now that you really mention it, just use a bunch of ultimates and just clear them right off the point. As we're not able to deal with it. And now we're into this second point. We saw it be a little bit difficult for X69, sorry, to actually make their way through this area. I have to see whether or not they can impose their will on this attacking side and force them to struggle as they did, but so far it's not really working out too well for them. They are standing on the point and making it as hard as possible for them to forcefully push it themselves, but they're losing members here and there. Here comes the coalescence to try and keep people alive and just hosing everyone down left, right and center. Be you an ally or an enemy, you are going to get that bit of a hosing. As here comes the rocket barrage, does manage to take down 2, takes down 3, and that should secure all the spaces they need in the world.
And just for good measure, Vanessa did throw out the Dragon Strike. Sure, it might have seemed a bit unnecessary, but with the rapid rate that Vanessa is acquiring the ability to use the Dragon Strike, it's not that big of a deal. And now Jim's Esports are being on top of the turrets and keeping an eye on the side of X69 as they roll out a spawn, just being an omnipotent threat, just up top, and really making X69's gaming just second guess where they stand.
Yeah, and they do get very advanced knowledge of the fact that the composition switch has come through, and it looks like it's working out pretty well so far. The Valkyrie does come through, as it does the explosion, takes down Zverev, not able to get out of harm's way. It's a nice little pickup for them as they're just trading back and forth. But Penny trying to stick on the point, but there's too many members from X69 to really just stick around. As Sugar does manage to take down Rani, gives them a little bit of extra space, but here comes a Dragon Strike, trying to force them away. The Pulse Bomb did manage to get the stick onto Fundray. Nicely done there from Shoko, who is really opening up a lot of space for their team, and this could give them the opportunity to really push all the way through to the second point potentially, barring any last-ditch effort to hold them at the second point.
And it looks like they're trying to do it with Stolen Pink to get the touch of the point, and then Rani getting the touch as well. Got close, but not close enough. Did claim Vanessa, but that's not going to do it when you have the teammates there to back you up. And that'll be the second point going to Jim's Esports. And just for good measure, Vanessa will be back in the fight for the next go around. And now 3 minutes and 25 as we go into the final phase of Blizzard World, and Pose taken out extremely early. This could be Jim's cue just to put the foot down and keep going.
Yeah, they have a lot of resources to work with coming into this next push, and Vanessa just clogging up a lot of those entry points with those arrows, making it very hard. Fundray, his shield is getting just shredded down by all this DPS, and he's not able to protect the team as he would want. As Bob does come through, as does the minefield, and Ike is trying to just stand still and just don't move, and the bombs won't hurt you. But unfortunately, that did not work, as 2 goes down to the minefield, 2 go down to the rocket barrage, and this is a very solid push coming through for Jim's Esports, and there's probably just going to be one solid defense left here for the side of X69 as they are getting interrupted. They try and get the way to the point, but there's just too much damage for them to deal with. Shoka is absolutely tearing them apart as Fundray does try to get the charge through, but there's just no one around to help him. He's trying to swing the hammer, but just all there is just a Lucio with him, gets taken down. There's just struggling for this defense. The Nano Boost does go down onto the Brigitte. I'm not sure if it's going to be enough at this stage, as Penny is just knocking people around. As it was just enough to give them the space to secure themselves the full push.
And they have time left to boot, and whoa, a lot, just basically just ruthless aggression from just as soon as that first point was captured. It was basically just non-stop. I only remember one time where the payload was stalled and had no contest on it. It was essentially them just fighting for it in the elongated state. It's like It's like one of those action animes where it just has a fight that lasts like 3 episodes. That's exactly what it felt like there with Jim's Esports on attack. And the good thing is, if memory serves, only Jim's Esports have to get a third to win out the map. Barring that, we go to a draw, and the draw will be Li Zhang, if I remember.
I believe the tiebreaker is
Oh no,
Ilios or Oasis. I might be Oasis.
I think it is. It is Oasis. From
So,
memory, I'm
yeah.
getting my season map pools mixed up.
All right, but first we need to see whether or not Jim's Esports are going to be able to, as you mentioned, get just a single tick. They have been they were a little bit tempered in their approach to the point their first time around. We'll see how it goes with this one. This defense has put up a bit of a different look. Wanted to bring Ike and his McCree to the table and not wanted to essentially set themselves up as fish in a barrel, but already Penny's just doing the laps, swinging around, being a nuisance, just being as disruptive as possible while all the damage comes raining in from afar. They do manage to stun him up with a flashbang, but Penny does manage to get out before they get taken down. Stolen Picnic already off the board. There's a great engagement there, and it's just so hard for them to really set their feet in one direction while you have a wrecking ball from one side, you have the Ash poking you from another, and the Farah from the third, and in disguise, and they're just losing members left, right, and center. Stolen Picnic is trying to keep this payload or keep this point stalled, but it's not nearly enough. And Jim's Esports secure themselves another win and have locked things up at 2 apiece.
That is one of the most clinical and brutal ways that you will see a DPS lineup like that be successful. And I really want to highlight this. Earl and the Ash. Goodness gracious, how much value Earl got off of their dynamite, especially in that final push, as being that threat of damage over time. Not even getting these successful detonations, but that threat has so much value. It really made X69 second guess where they stood. And now we go into the final map. And because we saw Nepal to open, and our final map is Control, we will be going to Busan.
Yeah, and this is going to be very, very interesting, considering how a lot of the Busan maps tend up ending to go. We're probably going to see a lot of what we're missing so far in this series so far, with X69 going for a little bit more of the standard, but Jim's essentially just throwing the playbook out the window and going for their own style of standard with this very DPS heavy lineup that is just tearing X69 apart, especially when it's around these control points.
Yeah, and maybe that will continue and just have a big run back for Jim's Esports, because we knew that they had potential from what we were told by our cohorts on the other stream, Peronius and Infinity. We were told that Jim's had a lot of damage composition and a lot of really strong showings on those compositions, and well, we've been delivered a very strong showing as to why that composition has been working for them.
Yeah, it was looking a little bit rough after those first 2 maps, with X69 just jumping out to a very early lead. But when we started getting into the assault and the hybrid and having to, funnily enough, assault a specific point, that's when the control that this Jim's Esports lineup have been utilizing with this DPS heavy composition, that's when it had really coming into its own. And I have to see whether or not they're going to be able to translate that back over to a control map, because when we're on Nepal, it looked like X69 just completely had the run of the game. But Jim's, it seems like they've gotten into their groove and are really starting to get into a good mindset, get into a good rhythm with this composition. I'm interested to see if they can roll with that momentum into this final map.
Maybe, or maybe it was only Nepal where that type of composition doesn't really bear fruit, and now on Busan, depending on what point we get first. That will be the big true tell. And if we get downtown first, that will be a field day for the heroes that love that long range, and we saw it time and again. But Earl on the Ash, if it ends up falling that way, we could be seeing Earl really come alive and continue that form and be, well, not the single-handed approach, but be a big part in perhaps stunning X69 and their potential advance. But that all comes down to what point we get, whether we get downtown, the sanctuary, or the Mecha base.
Yeah, I feel as though if we do end up seeing downtown, I feel as though that one, just the way these two teams have been playing, and especially in the way they've been constructing their compositions, I feel as though downtown is much more in favor of gyms. We've seen the style that they want to bring, and I feel as though, as you mentioned, the long range, essentially keeping your opponents at bay, that is exactly what Gyms Esports wants to be doing, and it's essentially what they have been doing for those past two maps. If we get to the Mega Base, could be a little bit more of a problem. It's a little bit more close quarters, where essentially the goats start to really go to another level, because you're going for a lot of those close range skirmishes where you're not necessarily having the room and the freedom to be playing around with a lot of these multi DPS lineups. So that is the potential once we get to either of those two stages. Once we get to Sanctuary, I guess everything's up in the air, and we'll just have to wait and see once we get into it.
And it's one of the caveats of having a lineup that has so much DPS but very little sustain. You basically live or die by how much damage you can accrue without a retaliation. If you end up just getting run down, it's not going to work, because the tank line or a typical goats lineup, they'll have too much momentum. They'll have the strength of positioning in terms of just having the point and having percentage to accrue, and it's just going to make it that much more difficult to fight back.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to let everyone know the reason why we still are not in game yet, one of the players has requested a rather short break, as we are going to be getting back into the game very shortly. It has been a rather long and grueling series so far. It's going for about an hour and a half, so I think with these players, with how hard they have been playing and with how much is on the line, they kind of deserve at least a little bit of a break at this point of it.
Yeah, and depending on the stage of the bracket, there has been just either running through it really quickly, or they're just sort of taking their time with things, because you know what you're playing for. You're playing a space in trials, and you don't want to set a foot wrong. So you want every opportunity to sort of recenter yourself, take a breather, and see how things are going, and they'll actually benefit both sides, because with Gyms Esports and X69, they've gone two apiece. X69 won the first two, the side of Gyms Esports won the second two, and now we basically have it all to do on Busan, and well, you can basically call it the air.
Yeah,
game.
We can talk about essentially the very differing styles in both these teams, and how the different areas in Busan do kind of favor one more than the other. But it's really hard to call, because even when it's looked favored for one team, the fights just tend to go on for ages, and makes it so and with it makes it so we don't really know exactly who's in control of the fights until it finally the dust settles. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting actually, as one of the players seems to be having a little bit of an issue, which is another reason for the somewhat extended break.
Yeah, just a little bit unfortunate for the player. The player is having an issue with his actual game. It's not running properly for him, and he can't go full screen, which is a error that I've not seen in ever, I don't think, but I've heard it has taken place, and it's really unfortunate for them. So we're just gonna have to wait until that gets sorted out before we move on to the final map of Busan. And just just to give you all a little bit of context as to how even this is. Both of these teams have, well, they've obviously won their first two matches of the day. X69 won their first one, 3 maps to 0, but then got forced to go to 5 maps versus Pulse, and this is actually their second best of 5, which has got, or first to 3 preferably, which has gone the distance. It was 3-2 to Pulse. Now we have another 5 map set between X69 and Jim's Esports. Well, Jim's Esports has gone through completely clean. 3-0 to Air Megalol and 3-0 to Devious.
Yeah, and, rather different paths here, but in the end, it's just who can win that final map on the day. So we can wax lyrical about how these teams have been playing, will be playing, and all that kind of stuff, but we just have to just get into the game once this player ends up getting a lot of those issues sorted out, and then we can finally answer a lot of those questions that we've been having. Will the multi-DPS lineup reign supreme? Is it actually the answer for the GOATs? But who knows? I mean, because there are certain situations where it just doesn't really feel like it's doing as much as we would like.
And it's because of the volatility of the lineups that Jim's Esports have thrown together. It's been extremely potent when it works, but when it doesn't work, it's extremely tough to regain your footing. And as a side note, when you say reign supreme, I'm reminded of Chairman Karga from Iron Chef, because he'd always close his monologues with "Which cuisine reigns supreme?" or
Oh,
something
God.
something similar. That's a throwback for those that have watched SBS over the last few years, over the last like 20 or so
How-
years.
That is a throwback.
Yeah.
Anyway, instead of listening to us prattle on about useless crap that isn't really all that necessary, we're just going to go to a quick 3-minute break while everything gets sorted out. So don't go too far away. We've got Game 5 between Jim's Esports and X69 Gaming coming right up. Hello everyone and welcome back. We are finally in to this game 5 between Jim's Esports and X69 Gaming. I'm Geo Phoenix and with me is Cyberwaste and Cyber. This is going to be a hopefully explosive finish to this already incredible series.
And if we do see the Ash, it will be explosive in so many other ways as well. With the dynamite, and then you'd have Diva with self-destructs and lots of explosions and particle effects all over the place. It will be lovely against the beautiful bustling skyline of Busan. And we're going downtown to start off with, and we will be going into the assembly phase very, very shortly, and we're just about to tick over. And Jim's Esports would really want to be keeping the momentum going over the last two maps. They've won 2 in a row, but lost, would you say, handily in the opening map, which was Control in Nepal?
There were points where it seemed quite handily in favor of X69, but there were moments of brilliance. Like we saw the style that Jim's Esports that wanted to play coming through in those rounds, but it just didn't necessarily seem to work as well on a lot of those Nepalese rounds. But here on Busan, this is, especially the downtown area we were mentioning before the break, this is one of those areas where it could very well get much more of the value. As we can see, even X69 has gone for a reasonably similar composition, albeit a little bit more tanky, as they go diving straight onto that backline, as they manage to take out so many members before the rest of Jim's Esports can really even react.
No, they got completely blindsided. Yes, Vanessa did get one, but that was nowhere near enough, and X69 have started accruing the percentage, and looks like Ash has been retired by Earl, has gone back to the Reaper, and depending on where Earl is positioned, this could bear a lot of good fragging power, but it will bank on getting a favorable position for themselves, and that's one way to do it. But that was Zeref knocking off Rani very early on, and Joko will bag a pair, one with the pulse pistols, one with the pulse bomb, and just as quickly as the site was acquired by X69, it is quickly snatched away. It's only the wrecking ball bleeded the clock, and it was quickly squandered there thanks to Earl and the Hellfire shotguns.
Yeah, that was a very quick turnaround fight there for the side of Jim's Esports. I have to see now how the response comes through for X69. They are sticking with that composition. Here comes the Dragon Strike to just go straight through those avenues. All it does is really stall out for just a few seconds. They're trying to make their way through. Have to be careful about the concussion grenade, as they do manage to take down Vanessa. Here comes the barrage, takes down Rani, but the response is really good there. Following the side of X69, they make their way towards the point. Haven't managed to secure it for themselves just yet, but Shoko, who has been an absolute menace so far, or the barrage, not the barrage, the Blossom comes through, manages to get one and also taking out another. So in the end, after the dust test settles, it seems as though the fight is going in favor of Jim's Esports. The reinforcements are starting to come through, as yet again, I keep on saying time and time again, Shoko is just an absolute menace for the side of X69. They just can't deal with him at the moment.
No, and that is the, well, just as you say it, the duel ended up happening between Ike and Shoko, and Ike will get the better of the traces there, but with all that said and done, that is a well and true victory for Jim's Esports as they move over to 3/4. 75% for the engagements have to come through, and be wary. There is the minefield at the ready too, and Rani got booped off extremely early in the piece, and that will delay things for the attack for a little while longer, and it'll be 95 give or take before another engagement takes place, let alone another tip.
Yeah, they have to be very careful about how they approach this. The minefield has been dropped onto the point. They are on the point. Overtime has been ticked. Earl is just standing there. Here comes the mines from the other side. Just trading back and forth. The kills are going to the red side as Penny gets taken down by his counterparts' mines. As the Rocket Barrage comes through, takes down Noosh, but does get traded back immediately. The Mercy is trying to get some work done installing the point out, but it's not going to be enough. The point does get captured by X69, but this is going to take a big effort for them to hold on here, because just one strong fight and this is going to be the first round going over to Jim's Esports.
And Jim will be just mowing right over whatever is thrown in front of him by X69. We'll have to wait and see. There is the power drive from Ryan. They really want the high ground on the side of X69. And Earl is more than happy to apply. Check it out. Plunge rate. That is a giant get for the Reaper there. And now it's just going back and forth like the old pendulum. There is the pulse bomb. Bears no fruit. Self-destruct comes out from Noosh. Nothing either. Only Ronnie is able to keep the Jim's Esports forces at bay for the time being. And now it's only playing for the clock now, with the X69 members going in single file. The point does flip over, and that will be the first point now. Downtown will go to Jim's Esports, and that will be them cleaning up 1 point of the 2 needed to take this set. And the run continues, Phoenix.
Yeah, they have secured match point for themselves. Just one more needed, and it's going to be the Mech Bay. But it was always going to be a rough ask for X69 to be able to hold on for that long, starting at 30% and having to hold it for the entirety of that duration, with just how efficient Jim's Esports was at getting themselves onto the point, getting those opening frags, and securing those fights for themselves, especially when Fundray was just a little bit too far forward and got completely punished by Earl's Reaper. At that point, it's just panic stations, and now I have to see whether or not they're able to get this second round to work just as well. As Ronnie gets a good engagement right off the bat, as I say that, gets turned completely on its head as Shoko just layers off across the damage. Both of the Wrecking Balls have been taken down as the fight starts, but with how far forward this engagement has been taken, X69 have managed to maintain control of the point. So even though they did end up losing numerically, they are maintaining control of the point, as Vanessa does manage to get a nice kill onto Ike, and it looks like now that they've got the man advantage, they are starting to make their way towards this point.
And it's still going to be a full-blown war of attrition. There is the Valkyrie from Jay, but Shoko will not be part of the fight. Tracer ate a ton of flail. Earl's just trying to stick and move, just like a boxing champion would. And is getting a ton of damage, but not really all that much value, and the health was depleted and then put to 0 by Noosh, and Poe will run right through Penny and the Wrecking Ball. So now the side of X69 will hold on to the point and have a lot to play with in terms of their ultimates. They have the Minefield at the ready, Pulse Bomb, the Rally, and now the other half of the equation are close to coming to being online as well.
Yeah, and here comes the engagement. The Death Blossom right off the bat doesn't really get too much out of it, as Jay is going to be the first victim of this fight, and the rest of the team just keeps on falling with them, as the entirety of, well, not the entirety of, but a decent number of the X69 members do push through, pick up a couple of extras, and keep control of this point. They're up to 70%, and it's looking really good for themselves right now. They didn't really overinvest in anything in holding that on for now, as Penny is going to get taken down immediately. Good start for the X69. And now I have to see whether or not Jim's Esports are going to be able to make their way towards the point, get a good fight for themselves, because somehow, somehow, they consistently manage to drag fights out of nowhere and secure themselves something that I never would have expected. But here comes the Dragon Strike. Does manage to take down Poe, and it also takes down Stolen Picnic on the Lucio. So this is their opportunity to get themselves onto the point and secure themselves at least some kind of defense. But now it is into overtime. Just one single fight could secure this round for the side of X69.
Well, Gyms have to play basically flawless from bell to bell now, because of the maxing out of X69 and the percentage accrued. There is a big pile driver coming in from Ronnie, and there is the Minefield pulled out from Petty. Solid Picnic will be silenced. Earl will pull out a Death Blossom, and X69 is stunned for now, and Jim's Esports, they're starting the rally off on a good note. They've just ticked into 30%, and they had to throw a little bit into the pot in terms of ultimates, but when you're on your last life, you basically have to check every avenue that you can.
Yeah, they have to be incredibly proficient with their ultimate usage. They can't use anything more than what they need, as the possible actually got eaten up, but they are going to end up losing their Lucio to the Dragon Strike. But it looks like they're able to get the fight on the point. Fundray getting a lot of work onto the squishy members with that Tesla cannon, and it looks like they've actually managed to get the fight to go their way. They've secured the point, and the rest of Jim's Esports are not able to get there, and that is going to secure themselves this round. And we are going to a final round here, Cyber. One more round to decide this entire match.
Final map, final round, and the final stand in the upper bracket for both of these teams. And we've been privileged to call this one for CappingTV and the Overwatch Open Division. What a show from both of these squads. And if only they could both stay in the upper bracket and move forward, because they both deserve it so much. But
yeah, they're both winners in our eyes, but one team has to lose at the end of the day. It is a competition, unfortunately, but we'll have to see who it ends up being. On one side, we have the very beefy lineup coming out of X69, and the tried and true DPS special coming out of Jim's Esports, coming in the blue, as we see the point unlocking in 10 with the Pharaoh in the skies. They are very content to play it from a distance, as Fundray is going to be the first one to go down, just getting peppered from long range with all of this damage, and it's looking pretty good for the side of Jim's Esports to open up this round.
Ike did get the frag on Earl, but not without Earl doing a lot of damage in reply, and Ike gets a sonic arrow right in the chops just to put it in with authority. Not only did they get a frag, they got recon for it too. Penny will take to the sky, put a power drive down. No fruit bad, but the side of X69 is still holding on. It's been going back and forth in front of the Taiko drum for quite a long time. The barrage will come out from Zeref, does claim one. Ike will get rid of Zeref in return, and it's still being in a state of contention for the time being. But now with the Lucio only rolling around the Taiko drum, Penny doing the same as the Wrecking Ball. It is still going. We cannot take a breath, as this fight will be a full-blown war. And we haven't even started with accruing percentage yet.
Yeah, no team has been able to secure themselves anything just yet. It looks like it's going to go in favor of X69. They finally secure it for themselves after an incredibly extended opening engagement, as Zeref does manage to take down Ike to give themselves a little bit of extra space. But now that the percentage has started to tick up, now is where things start to really be put to the test, as mines are being dropped left, right, and center. Looks like it's going to be a little bit more favorable to the side of X69, because the rest of Jim's Esports just cannot make their way towards the point, and that was an incredibly good fight coming out for X69, just only needing the single ultimate to secure themselves a little bit more time on this point. And they have some good ones to work with. They have the rally up, they have the mech explosion. They have to be careful what's coming at them. There is a Death Blossom, there's a Rocket Barrage. Those can be incredibly devastating. We'll have to see how this next fight goes out, as they do throw just both of them right into the abyss, as one has already gone down. They take down Fundray as well. The mech explosion comes through, doesn't land onto anything, but throughout all of this, the point is still in favor of X69. Jim's Esports do make their way towards the point, but they're not able to knock anyone off it just yet. They're using a lot of their displacement, but so far it's not really paying any dividends. They're starting to pick up more of the kills, which is what they really need to just get them way away from that point, so nothing can really stop them. But right now, Rani is just swinging around on the point. It doesn't matter how much armor you have if you just cannot shove that hamster ball off that wheel. They finally secure the fight, but 80% has already been accrued here from X69.
And two straight fights and two elongated, well, you call them a fight, but I would call it a war from both sides, just jockeying for position back and forth, a long exchange. And neither of them wanted to submit until the final breath. But now with with Jim's Esports being in the driver's seat, that could be a lot better. There is the sound barrier from the side of X69 to try to get back into the point. It is still at the ready. There is the barrage from Zenith, does get one, and it looks like the blue side is getting the frag to fall in their favor right now. And thanks to Vanessa and the Storm, though, being on the Hanzo, that will be a fight a little bit more convincingly taken out by Jim's Esports. But if you are on the side of X69, I was thinking that they would want to use a couple of the ults that they had on deck, but we are having a full-blown reshuffle and a recalibration as the side of Jim's Esports ticks over halfway.
Yeah, they have managed to switch out the majority of their composition. They almost have a mech explosion on Noosh for this next engagement, which might be what they need to give themselves some space. There's only really a Death Blossom to really be worrying about at this stage. They do just boost their way onto the point to start this fight off. Here comes a Death Blossom, doesn't really get too much, gets stunned immediately. Ike manages to clean him up. The mech explosion doesn't get too much out of it, but now here comes the disruption from the Wrecking Ball. The armor up does get used by Shoko, so they are going to be a little bit more durable in this fight. But Ike manages to take down Zeref in the skies. Really nicely done there, but gets cleaned up by Shoko. So the team fight is going a little bit more in favor of X69. The point is still in favor of Jim Esports, but it's going to be traded back over shortly, I believe. But the Mines actually come out in a really good opportunity. The overtime has been picked up for the side of Jim's Esports, but they are losing members left, right, and center, and they are going to end up securing it. Transcendence does get used, and now it's back over to the red side. They go charging all the way through, trying to get onto Zeref, who has now switched over to the Tracer, and now it's almost at panic stations. Here comes the rally up from Rainy, trying to keep everyone alive. You saw the very low health bars on the supports. They need to keep themselves alive, and in this fight, almost at the overtime, it's a Deadeye onto the Tracer just to get them right out of the fight, and it looks like X69 might have done it. Pose just gets a 3-man as they throw the mech explosion just to secure themselves the win, as X69 in a grueling series managed to take it over Jim's Esports.
And you could not have asked for a closer point, not especially for the final conclusion of this. Well, it was a tale of 3 acts, 2 different teams, and a whole lot of landscape showing from both of these teams in terms of composition, in terms of how they were played. And goodness gracious me, there was a clinic put on by Earl from Ash in a few of these maps, but when it all comes down to it, whoever could last the longest in those elongated fights, and that was put on display in the final point. Oh, that's what wins games, especially ones that have the nature of Overwatch. And that is what was put on display by X69. And they end the day with being in the upper bracket.
Yeah, they are going to be in the winners bracket finals, and unfortunately for Jim's Esports, they will drop into the losers bracket. But for a team of that caliber to put on such a good show with the style that they have been showing, you could very easily see them make a very solid run into making it much closer to getting a potential rematch with X69. So they are by no means out of the tournament just yet. It is a double elimination bracket. So Jim's Esports, they are still alive, and they have a lot to be proud of in that series. It's just a little bit unfortunate they weren't able to get the big win at the end of the day, but they did so much good things, especially with the styles of compositions that they were bringing through. And my God, what a way to clean up the upper bracket.
That's it. That's definitely it. Both of these teams are teams to keep an eye on them. We wish them both the best in the future, but X69 will be your victors 3-2 over Jim's Esports, and we shall be jumping quickly to a brief intermission here on brief break here on CappingTV, and our coverage of Overwatch Open Division Season 1 for 2019. I've been CyberWest, and the main maestro has been GL Phoenix, and our producer has been Mitch. We shall return very soon.